That is a California wolf, my friends.
Ooh.
As a young man working in Yellowstone National Park, I was lucky enough to experience a pack of wolves in the wild. I was marking boundary signs on a place called the Sky Rim. It's high ridge line, and I took the shortcut down a canyon at the end of the day. And right in the early evening, when the canyon kind of met this little valley, I startled about 6 or 7 wolves. And for me, that was an absolute life-changing moment. That's an ancient human interaction to encounter wolves in the wild, and historically it's very much an American experience to encounter wolves like that in the wild. Nothing. Not a thing.
Not even one recording?
No.
Blast! Camera trap number 1.
No success.
Anything?
Not even a deer.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Camera traps are hard.
Camera trapping is very hard.
Okay.
As a conservationist, sometimes it does feel like we're living in a world of wounds. One of the wounds is what we did to wolves. And so when we see a wolf in the wild, when you see a sign of a wolf, you get a wolf on a camera, you hear him howl at night, it means that wild has come back. And maybe a few of those countless sins that we committed in our great rush to tame this country, maybe a few of those sins are forgiven too. We did get some beautiful shots of grass, beautiful shots, the river's behind in the sunlight. Nothing so far. Optimism is still extremely high. I do think we're gonna get a wolf eventually. A quick background on wolves in the West. Wolves once occupied every corner of this country, from Mexico to the Arctic Circle. They were branded basically the chief animal villain to animal husbandry, to ranching, and really to manifest destiny. And so because of that, Americans have waged war on wolves for centuries. And really, in the last part of the 1800s and the early 1900s, it was a systematic, mostly chemical war. It was chemical warfare. The mass production and distribution of strychnine, a poison, allowed the average person to kill a wolf, skin it for its pelt, and then turn that pelt into the government and collect a bounty. They got paid to kill wolves. There were entire government bureaus dedicated to paying out wolf bounties and ensuring predator eradication in the West. An example, in Montana, over a 45-year period, like late 1800s, early 1900s, 2/3 of the state's entire budget went to paying out wolf and coyote bounties. So we're talking a government-sponsored mass predator eradication program never before seen on this earth. Hundreds of thousands of wolves died in the West due to these policies and practices. By about 1950, wolves were wiped out in all the western states and only occupied a small little region in the northern Great Lakes area. Still nope. Couple critters, no wolves. So in the 1960s and 70s, things finally started to turn around for the wolf. In that era, we the people wanted a little more environmental protection and the conservation of species. And our elected officials responded. That brought us the Clean Air Act, the Wilderness Act, and the Endangered Species Act. The wolf was one of the original species listed when that law came into being, and it was signed by President Nixon. The Endangered Species Act requires that federal agencies help recover species, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wrote a recovery plan for the wolf, and when they implemented that plan 20 years later, it resulted in the reintroduction of wolves to central Idaho and Yellowstone National Park. Little did we know at the time that those dominoes would keep falling. Wolves would keep expanding from those reintroductions across the Pacific Northwest into Oregon, and eventually, another 20 years after that, those Oregon wolves would wander down into California. When you follow the wolf comeback story in the West, it becomes quickly clear that wolves are also a manifestation of our political, social, and economic divides. Rural versus urban, red and blue, food producer and food consumer. Wolves can bring out the worst in us, and they can highlight all those tensions that are built into our system of government. And in most cases, those tensions are state rights versus the powers retained by the federal government. Squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Not good. Just squirrels, no wolves. Interesting.
Not even any deer, huh?
Nope, no deer. Just squirrels.
We could make a documentary about squirrels.
We could. But who would watch it, huh? And this is where it gets interesting, right? California takes that typical wolf narrative and flips it on its head. By no means are politics in the state of California dominated by ranching. And in fact, the majority of Californians are likely in support of wolves. I think we got one. Oh! That is a California wolf, my friends. Holy cow. Ha ha!
I hope I was recording that. Ooh.
I do want to say, as a Californian, I'm pretty excited right now. This is kind of a big moment for me. We hope you stick around for our next few episodes. We're going to do our best to try and find and film some wolves. We're also going to learn a little bit more about why wolf habitat and private property overlap, and the potential impacts that can occur when that happens.
Where the Wild Roam is hosted by Joe Flannery.
My grandfather was a park ranger. My parents were both park rangers. I was the third generation. I've been lucky enough to spend my entire life outdoors, learning and working in conservation. And I'm excited to share that knowledge with you.
With Kyle Lancaster.
Lately, we've been getting into conservation filmmaking. We believe that a conservation ethic begins with education and understanding. Never stop learning about the natural world.
And hey, if you like the show, please support, share, subscribe, follow, like, and all that stuff. Let's start a movement that prioritizes wildlife, wild places, and conservation within our daily lives.